Hello everyone, and thank you for tuning in to TradeChat. My name is Panzer, and today we're going to be talking about the Druid changes happening in patch 7.0. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and if you do, remember to rate it thumbs up. Druids have always been known for their shape-shifting abilities, their variety of playstyles, and their hybrid utility. They have 4 clearly defined specs, which each reinforce what it is to be the fantasy of each type of Druid. In Legion, most of the class changes are in place to establish differences between each spec, but since Druids kind of have that on lockdown, Blizzard instead will be focusing on their hybrid utility and their utilization of off-spec forms to further reinforce the theme and fantasy of shapeshifting. For a really long time, Druids have had an arsenal of shapeshift forms at their disposal, but it hasn't really been optimal to use them outside of their main spec form. To combat this, in 7.0, Blizzard will be adding a new row of Affinity talents to replace Heart of the Wild. Unlike Heart of the Wild, Affinity talents are not temporary buffs. They will grant the Druid a permanent passive as well as grant them access to core off-spec abilities to better utilize their shapeshift forms. Druids will be able to choose one of 3 affinity talents, which will represent the remaining 3 specs that are not their main spec. So a Guardian Druid, for instance, can choose between Resto, Balance, and Feral affinities, but a Guardian Druid cannot choose a Guardian affinity because that wouldn't really be very helpful or make a lot of sense. To give you a better idea of what affinity talents do and how they help Druids, let's take a look at each one. The Balance spec affinity passive is called Astral Influence, and it increases the range of all spells, abilities, and auto attacks by 5 yards. The Feral affinity passive is called Feline Swiftness, and it increases movement speed by 15%. The Guardian affinity passive is called Thick Hide, and it reduces all damage taken by 10%. And finally, the Restoration affinity passive is called Ysera's Gift, and it constantly heals the Druid or a Druid's friendly allies when the Druid is at full health. Affinities, when used properly, can provide the Druid with a lot more interesting combat choices as well as utility in their off-spec forms. Also, before I move on to the spec-specific stuff, I want to quickly mention that raid-wide buffs have been removed from World of Warcraft and Legion, meaning that Mark of the Wild has been removed. R.I.P. We knew ye well. Guardian Druid's fantasy revolves around taking on the form of a great bear. They are absolute walls of fur and tooth and claw and rage, and they harness energy from nature to stand in between their allies and their enemies, and they're big tough bears, which all sounds fantastic on paper, except that Guardian Druids historically have had an enormous emphasis on avoidance, and they dodge more attacks than any other tank, so they don't currently really live up to the reputation of being a big tough bear. To combat the inconsistency between the playstyle and the fantasy of a Guardian Druid, in Legion, bear tanks will survive through sheer tenacity, thick hide, massive regeneration, and strong resilience. Their kit will be tweaked and reworked to emphasize these defensive themes and de-emphasize dodge. The first thing you may notice about playing a Guardian Druid in 7.0 is that their mastery has been completely reworked. Nature's Guardian is the new mastery in Legion, and it increases maximum health, healing, and attack power by 8%. Primal Tenacity was their old mastery, and it granted an absorb shield based on physical attacks against the Druid. A new defensive ability called Mark of Ursal has been added for Guardian Druids. It has a half-second cooldown and reduces magical damage taken by 30% for 6 seconds. Now, I don't main a bear or anything, but I have a feeling that's going to be used pretty often. Frenzied Regeneration has been completely reworked in 7.0. It previously would convert your rage into HP, but now it will heal the Druid for 40% of all damage taken in the past 5 seconds over the next 3 seconds for a minimum of 5% of your maximum health. Frenzied Regeneration will also function on charges, and by default you will be able to hold 2 charges which regenerate over 24 seconds. Guardian Druid's artifact in Legion is actually a set of 2 fist weapons called the Claws of Ursoc. What's cool about this is that the player's bear form will actually change appearance based on the artifact variant chosen. Feral Druid's fantasy focuses on being a ferocious, agile predator, and to be honest, their gameplay already complements those themes pretty well, so Feral Druids will not see many changes in 7.0, but they will see some minor tweaks in their talent tree to provide a wider array of combat customization. The most notable change for Feral is that Savage Roar is no longer a baseline ability. Instead, it is a talent in the same row as Incarnation and Soul of the Forest. Blizzard did this with the intention of allowing Druids to make more meaningful choices to cater to their personal playstyle. Feral Druid's artifact in Legion is a set of 2 daggers called the Fangs of Ashamain. Just like Bear Druids, Cat Druids will also see a change to their feral form based on the variant of artifact that they choose. Resto Druids are in a pretty solid place right now, and their gameplay does complement the theme of harnessing nature to heal and revive your allies, which means you're not going to see too many changes for Resto Druids. The biggest change Resto Druids are going to see is a rework of their mastery. In Legion, Harmony will increase your healing done by 5% for each restoration-specific healing over time effect on your target. Now, this is obviously a little more complicated because Harmony used to be a passive and now it's sort of a you have to use it to make it work type ability, but I think given the right circumstances, it has the potential to be a lot more powerful. Another quick thing worth noting is that Rebirth will be usable by any spec of Druid, but Revive will only be usable by Resto spec Druids. And on that same note, and this goes for any class, Mass Res is now a healer-specific ability. And I'm going to be honest, I neither understand or appreciate this change. As someone who mains a healer, I am telling you right now, if I have to run back, your lazy ass is running back too. I am not resing you. Resto Druid's artifact in Legion will be Jih'Nir the Mother Tree, and before you ask, no, it will not change the appearance of any of their forms. Balanced Druid's fantasy focuses on harnessing natural and celestial magics to fight their enemies, and while currently their gameplay does reinforce these themes, it's still not very good gameplay. For a long time, Druids have just kind of like stared at their UI, looking for cues, while casting their spells in a largely predetermined order. It's boring and also overcomplicated, but also too simple. It's very confusingly bad right now. But in Legion, all of this is getting overhauled so that balanced Druids are honestly just more fun to play and have more meaningful choices to make. The biggest change Moonkins will notice in 7.0 is the removal of their Eclipse Bar UI and the whole Eclipse mechanic. It's been replaced by Astral Power, which they build and spend mechanics. So you're going to build it up by using Lunar Strike and Solar Wrath, which are previously known as Starfire and Wrath. And the big difference between those two spells is that Lunar Strike has an AoE component to it, whereas Solar Wrath is just single target. Now, once you've built up Astral Power, you can spend it on Starfall, which is AoE, or Star Surge, which is single target. Obviously, since the Eclipse Bar and the Eclipse mechanic is gone and it's been replaced by Astral Power, Balanced Druid's Mastery has also been reworked. Starlight is their new mastery, and it will increase the damage done by Starfall and Star Surge, as well as increase the effects of empowerments by 14%. In case you're wondering, empowerments are granted by casting certain spells, and then what they do is they basically buff all the damage in their school of magic. So lunar empowerments buff lunar magic, and solar empowerments buff solar magic, and stellar empowerments buff stellar magic. You get it? You do. I can tell. As a Moonkin, you will be missing a few spells from your spellbook like Hurricane and Wild Mushroom, but you will be pleased to know that Innervate is making a comeback, but not exactly the way you remember it. In 7.0, Innervate will empower a friendly target to cast spells without using mana for 10 seconds. Both Balance and Resto Druids will have access to the Innervate ability. Balanced Druid's artifact weapon in Legion is called the Scythe of Elune, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but no, it's not going to change the look of your forms at all. You do get an updated HD Boomkin model in Legion, but it's not going to change based on your artifact variant, which sucks. I know, it's stupid. That is a stupid thing Blizzard did. I'm sorry. Hopefully they'll update it. Maybe they'll update it. I'm sorry. I'm just the messenger. Don't push me in the pit, please. This is Sparta! So So to quickly recap, the fantasy of shape-shifting as a druid is being emphasized with a new row of affinity talents. These will provide the druid with a passive as well as access to off-spec abilities when they use their off-spec form. It's like kind of having like a mini off-spec within your main spec. It's real cool. Guardian druids are going to be seeing a de-emphasis on dodge and more emphasis on staying alive through health regeneration and cooldowns and just generally being tough. Feral druids, nothing is really changing of any significance, I'm sorry. Resto druids are going to be seeing a change in their mastery. It's no longer a passive, instead it's something that you actively have to like build up. And balanced druids are being completely reworked with the removal of the Eclipse bar and the Eclipse UI and the implementation of the new Astral Power build and spend mechanic, which also means their mastery is being worked to complement that. That is the TLDR of everything that's going on for druids in 7.0. Of course, this is a very TLDR video. If you would like to check out what your talent trees are going to look like, of course, they're very different because not only are you going to have your PvE tree, which is totally different than what it is in game now, you're also going to have a separate PvP tree. So I will have all of that stuff linked in the info below. And of course, there's more changes than what I just talked about today, but I didn't want the video to be 8 hours long. I mean, maybe some of you guys do, but I don't. No, thank you. I politely decline your offer for an 8-hour video. Thanks. I'm gonna go. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, thumb it up. Leave me a comment about being a druid. I don't know. Do you like being a druid? Do you not like being a druid? Are you into being balanced? Are you like into this new astral power thing? Are you against it? As a resto druid, are you pissed about the lack of the passive mastery, or do you think that you could like min-max the crap out of this and be a way better druid? As a cat, do you feel exactly the same? No change. As a bear, do you feel tough now? Let me know. These questions are eating me alive. I'm gonna go. If you like the video, thumb it up, subscribe, comment, all that stuff. I love you all. You're in my hearts. I'll see you soon. Goodbye. Hunters are next. Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye.